You know, my dear people, this niche is corrupt. The emulation niche is full of channels that would literally recommend a piece of poop with a golden leaf on it just so they make money. And I understand why, because people love cool things like paying rent. They love luxuries like buying food. So I understand why they do it. But my gripe, and the reason why I started this channel, was because I always felt that a lot of the reviewers that we watch and trust, not all of them mind you, a lot of them I like, but plenty others have turned into nothing more than soulless salesmen, Trojan horses with a smile that would say or do anything to trick us into buying said object. And most of them don't talk about anything that's not new, because something that's not new doesn't bring in views, therefore doesn't earn in profit. And this is actually the reason why I made this clip. I realized that I've played with a lot of controllers by this point. Controllers that anyone would recommend, like the GameSir G8 Galileo, or a fairly new telescopic controller like the BSP D8, or hell, Xbox controller like this one, or this one. Even Chinese knockoffs like this one, which is $20 by the way. But if there's one thing that I learned, is that some of the best gadgets are usually not talked about too often. For example, my Lenovo Legion Y700 2023 tablet, the one which basically emulates everything under the sun, has barely been touched on YouTube. And the same goes for this controller. In fact, this clip is about this controller. This beauty right here is an Xbox version of the 8BitDo SN30 Pro. And you'd be forgiven if you didn't notice it so far, because 8BitDo released like a million versions of this controller. But to give you some quick context, this is what you would get if an SNES and an Xbox controller would make sweet love, and this would be the offspring of that. And there's a lot of beautiful variations of this, like the newer atomic purple and I think radioactive green versions, which have that cool semi-transparent shell. But this one is better than all of them, with a big drawback, which I'm gonna talk a bit later in the clip. Because this one is Xbox branded, companies cannot really use the Xbox brand just because they want to. They have to design these controllers around some specs that Microsoft enforces on them. And one of those mandatory requirements were beautiful analog triggers. And as far as I know, all other variations of this controller don't have analog triggers. They have very sad digital triggers which basically succumb to just being buttons. And this, I would argue, is one of the best controllers to get. People talk about ergonomics a lot when we talk about controllers, and the main thought that gets soldered in our head is that ergonomics are basically a synonym to either the Xbox layout, PlayStation layout, or whatever other layout that has grips on the side, because this is more comfortable for the hand. And I do not contest that. Yeah, this is comfortable, but there are many other unexplored ways or forgotten ways where we can talk about freaking ergonomics and comfort in controllers. I would argue that this is immensely more comfortable in the hand than this. It's not even a contest, because this, and Nintendo, for all their defects, and trust me, they have immense defects, I have to commend them. They got this right in the SNES days. Your hand basically wraps around the controller. Your fingers naturally sit on the triggers, and your thumbs naturally rest on the joysticks. This is peak comfort. I cannot overstate this. This is so natural in the hand, you don't even feel it. And it's light as a feather as well, but not in the cheap way. Another place where I think we've been conditioned like freaking hamsters is to think that extra weight means quality. That's why the newest flagship phones and iPhones, they weigh like a ton of bricks. It's not a functional thing. That's solely for the consumer monkeys, me and you, to think, oh my god, this is high quality, look how heavy it is, I can do arm curls with this phone. But there's quality in lightness as well, as long as it's done right. And for context, my setup is the following. I connect this to my Lenovo Legion Y700 tablet, and I either play on it as is, or I connect my tablet to the projector to display the PlayStation 2 games, because that's what I play mostly nowadays, on a huge freaking wall, and I just sit on a lounge chair with this in hand and just play. Now, bear in mind, I could easily play with this. or any other controller that's quote-unquote ergonomic, but I realized that instinctively, without thinking, I always go to this, because this, to my reptilian brain, is just better in every way. But this has a huge drawback, and I better say this now before I forget. This only works in D input mode and not X input mode, meaning that it will work on Android, it will work on Chrome OS, it will work, I think, don't quote me on this, I think on the Nintendo Switch, but it will not work on Windows PCs. And I have no idea about Mac because I never use Mac. So you have some limitations with where you can use it. But if your use case involves an Android device, doesn't matter if it's a TV box or Nvidia Shield or phone or tablet, this is a freaking godsend. And it has some age to it, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna tell you fairy tales here. This is, as far as technology is concerned, an ancient controller. It's been released 2 years ago, I think, but it's way better than all other modern variations from 8BitDo that I tried. And they have some good controllers. Besides this, I'm not gonna bash on this company. They were just very attentive with little things. Look at the space between the A, B, X, Y buttons. You might think this looks weird, but it's actually so freaking comfortable because you're not squished in a tiny area. Your thumb actually has space to maneuver and to move. You feel like a freaking king. You feel like the controller is way more spacious than it actually is, while at the same time you enjoy the benefits of a controller that's on the small side and incredibly comfortable for the hand. I truly think that during the SNES days we had some peak innovation going on. After the disaster of the Nintendo Entertainment System controller, you know, that freaking rectangle, because that's what it was, a rectangle with sharp edges, they went back to the drawing board and they came up with this design. Granted, not this controller, because this is a modern incarnation of that controller. But I just can't get over how beautiful this works. And it doesn't have fancy stuff like Hall effect triggers and joysticks, but I would argue that it doesn't need it. Everybody's afraid of stick drift, and I understand why, but we've been duped, people, and Hall effect joysticks and triggers have become nothing more than a marketing ploy by this point. Look, this controller has endured torture under my tutelage, okay? I've been putting it in backpacks. At one point the backpack in which it was in fell, I kid you not, down a cliff like 7 meters or something, and it was still functional afterwards. And it was squished there with other stuff like my toothbrush and clothes. I really didn't baby this thing. And these are as traditional joysticks as one can get. And they are still perfectly functional with no stick drift whatsoever. And this is almost 10 years old right now. This is not a young controller. If you think that, oh, it can't be that old because it's obviously an Xbox One S controller, then I'm sorry to break it to you. Time kinda flew, Entropy did its thing. We're all on our way towards becoming old, outdated farts. So you might as well embrace it. Embrace it, become a ruggedy old man stuck in your ways and enjoy your ways. If emulation is your hobby because the dopamine flows better when it comes from nostalgia, then embrace it. Get one of these, or whatever tickles your dopamine gland. Stop feeling bad for it. By the way, if you want this, I'll drop links for the 8BitDo SN30 Pro controller right in the description. But before you're even tempted to buy this thing, you need to understand why this was designed for. This was basically designed for phones in mind, and it comes with a very nice stand, which I don't have, because I kind of modded it back in the day to fit my Galaxy Fold 3. I think I still have some pictures of that somewhere. If I find them, I'm gonna put them in this clip. I'm so proud of that creation. It was freaking beautiful, and it worked wonderfully. But eventually I had to change phones, because folding phones, no matter how awesome they are still fragile as one heck of a mother flipper. So I eventually returned back to good old candy bar phones. But yeah, that stand is amazing, and because it has two brackets, you can adjust it so that the weight of your phone doesn't press on your wrists, and you can actually enjoy whatever you're doing, whatever you're emulating or playing for literal hours on end without suffering any discomfort. And yeah, I guess I would wish that more YouTubers would re-review things that I would call value items. In a sea of freaking e-waste, we have little glimmers of hope like this baby right here. And nobody's talking about them because everybody's going towards the brand new stuff that sells. And again, nothing wrong with that. As a guy from a former communist country, God bless capitalism. But this doesn't mean that we shouldn't forget these forgotten jewels. This works just as good as it did when I bought it. And it's still on sale. I think it's $40 or $50 now. You need to check the link. I'm not really sure how much it's going for. The price fluctuates quite a lot on AliExpress. But if anything, I think I created this clip out of frustration more than anything else. In a perfect world, people would talk more about stuff like this. By the way, if you like the kinds of videos that I do and if you want to support the channel, and when I say channel, I mean me, because this is a one-man circus that I do here, feel free to become a member. You can choose any tier. More than anything, I appreciate the gesture of support behind it. But if you don't want to, that's perfectly okay. I appreciate you watching me anyway. Don't forget to subscribe if you hadn't, because this channel is so freakishly small and you can help me grow it. And I would love you forever for this. You would be my boo, you know? This community that's forming around this channel is freaking amazing. I wouldn't trade you for even $400,000, $420,000. We'll talk, but not $400,000. See you in the next clip. Bye.